2,000 years ago, there was a city in the desert with no river, no lake, no easy farmland, and no reason it should have become rich. But caravans crossing Arabia still came here. Rome wanted what passed through here. Kings paid for what passed through here. This city was Petra, and the people who built it were the Nabataeans. They did not conquer the desert. They learned how to make the desert charge admission. And that is the part most postcards leave out. Petra was not just carved into stone. It was engineered against thirst. The Nabataean kingdom rose from the desert roots of northwestern Arabia and southern Jordan. By the 1st century BCE, its capital, Petra, had become one of the richest trade cities between Arabia and the Mediterranean. The map explains why. Frankincense and myrrh came north from southern Arabia. Spices and luxury goods moved through desert routes. And from Petra, caravans could reach Gaza, Damascus, Egypt, and the Roman world. Here is the number that changes the story. Petra was not a city beside water. It was a city that had to manufacture reliability in a landscape designed to punish mistakes. That is why Petra matters. Anyone can build beside a river. The Nabataeans built where water appeared suddenly, violently, and then vanished. The Nabataeans began as desert traders. That sounds simple. It was not. In the desert, geography is not background. It is a weapon. Ancient writers described the Nabataeans as people who knew where the hidden water was. They dug cisterns, covered them, and marked them with signs only their own people understood. To an enemy army, the desert looked empty. To the Nabataeans, it was a map. In 312 BCE, one of Alexander the Great's successors tried to raid them. The target was not a palace. It was their mobile wealth: camels, spices, silver, and trade goods. The raid looked successful at first. Then the Nabataeans returned. They knew the terrain. They knew the water. And the desert stopped being empty. This is the first lesson of Petra. The people who control the route do not always need to control the empire. They only need to control the moment when everyone else becomes vulnerable. In Petra's case, that moment was simple. When a caravan ran out of water. At its height, Petra was not just a city. It was a filter for wealth. Frankincense was burned in temples. Myrrh was used in perfume, medicine, and burial rituals. These were not decorative luxuries. They were sacred, medical, political, and expensive. Every caravan needed water. Every merchant needed protection. Every route needed local knowledge. The Nabataeans sold all three, but their greatest technology was not the famous carved buildings. It was the water system behind them. Petra caught flash floods with dams, moved water through channels cut into stone, stored it in cisterns, and turned short violent rain into a year-round urban system. Think about that. Most cities grow because water is already there. Petra grew because its engineers made water arrive on schedule, and that is what tourists often miss. The Treasury is beautiful. But the real miracle is that anyone could live there at all. That is why Petra was more than a stop on a trade route. It was a promise. Bring your goods through our desert, and you will survive the crossing. Ignore us, and the same desert becomes your enemy, the Nabataeans did not vanish. They were absorbed. Their cities became Roman. Their trade routes changed. Their language, written in a form of Aramaic, helped shape scripts that later fed into the development of Arabic writing. Their water engineering still amazes researchers today. Not because it was huge, because it was adapted. Every dam, channel, and a cistern answered one question. How do you build a city where nature says no? And that may be why Petra still feels impossible. It is not only a monument. It is proof that infrastructure can be more powerful than armies. An army can take a city. But water determines whether that city can keep breathing after the army leaves. 3 things the Nabataeans teach us that still apply today. 1. Own the bottleneck. The Nabataeans did not own every product on the incense route. They owned the dangerous middle. In business, the bottleneck is often more valuable than the product itself. 2. Invisible systems create visible beauty. People photographed the treasury, but the water system made Petra possible. The thing everyone praises is often sitting on top of work nobody sees. That is true for cities. It is true for companies. And it is true for people. The visible result is usually the last layer, not the foundation. 3. Never build a strategy that depends on the world staying inconvenient. The Nabataeans profited because the desert was hard to cross. But once sea routes improved, their advantage weakened. If your power comes from friction, your greatest threat is not an enemy. It is someone making the friction disappear. Here is what I want to leave you with. Most people remember Petra as a beautiful ruin. But beauty was not what made it rich. Water did. Roots did. Trust did. And a people who understood the desert better than anyone trying to cross it. So here is my question for you. If a city can survive in the desert by mastering its hidden systems, what hidden system do you think modern cities depend on most? Tell me in the comments. I will pin the most interesting answer. Subscribe prompt. Next episode, coming next Friday. Like plus share prompt.